So my friend Josie, who's the mayor of Tofino, her husband is a history buff, and he told her recently, which she relayed to me, that back in the days of George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, they would make 3-hour speeches, and then people would go to the pub and deliberate on some of the things they said. I won't make a 3-hour speech because we only have the space booked until 7. But I do want to take the time to give you a little bit more than just a few sound bites, because I think you deserve it, and I think public discourse and public dialogue deserves more than just a few sound bites from somebody who's asking for your confidence to run this city once again for the next 4 years. So I'm going to speak about 3 things. One of them will be short but sweet, and it's why we love this city so much. The second thing I'm going to speak about are what are our big challenges right now. Hard to reach eye contact with all of you when some of you are behind and beside me. And the third thing that I'm going to talk about is how do we solve these challenges together, joyfully. So why do we love our city so much? Me and my team and I have been gathering in the living rooms of people around Victoria for the past many months, and that's the question I ask when I start. What do you love about Victoria? We love our neighborhoods. We love that Victoria is walkable and likable. We love our small business community because they're just members of the community, just like the rest of us. There's no separation in Victoria between business and community. We love downtown vibrancy. We love our festivals. We love that we're a small city with a big city arts and culture scene. And most of all, we love our sense of connection and belonging with each other and to a place. So that's what we love. What are our challenges right now? Well, before I go there, I'd like to talk about what are no longer our challenges right now. 1, the bridge. It's finished. Which was not the case when I took office. It was a disaster waiting to happen. We seized hold of the project, hired a wicked-ass smart guy named Jonathan Huggett who got the project done. The other thing that's no longer a challenge is sewage treatment. One of my colleagues, who is now a friend, we still send each other poo emojis. She was a consultant on the sewage project, and really good to get that done. So that's no longer a challenge. The other thing that's no longer a challenge that was 4 years ago is when we were campaigning last time, all we heard over and over again was the downtown retail vacancy rate was over 10%, downtown was dying, people were leaving, businesses were leaving, and so on. 4 years later, the downtown retail vacancy rate is below 4%, and now it's hard to find a space to rent in the downtown. Another challenge we no longer have because of the JAWS and others, there were little new office spaces and no new jobs, few new jobs being created in the downtown. And thanks to Rob and others, we have beautiful spaces like this that are public spaces and work spaces at the same time. And when we were asking Rob if we could use this space tonight, he reminded Chris Ann that at the public hearing for this building, which was just at the beginning of my term as mayor, I actually teared up. Because what this building and the bike lane that they've built outside in the public realm is it's what Charles Montgomery calls the makings of a happy city. So we didn't have that and buildings like this. Well, we had the atrium, but there was a kind of a stagnancy in terms of new office development. The other challenge that we no longer have is for 30 years in this city, there was not one new rental building built, not one. And in the past 4 years, we've seen many rental buildings under development. The other challenge we had, that we no longer have, although we have another challenge related to it, we didn't have any money dedicated to affordable housing, not any, $0. And working together with the region, as a region, we now have $90 million to build affordable housing in this region. And for all of history, it was only Victoria that was paying. And now this $90 million, everyone is paying. Langford is paying. Hallway is paying. We are all paying as a region for affordable housing. And the other thing that we didn't have, the challenge that we did have that we no longer have, is we had no leadership on climate. And that's a funny thing to say because we think of ourselves as a green city, but if you look back over the years, our emissions as a community have actually been increasing. And so now at the end of this 4-year term, we have a climate leadership plan. All right, but it's not all roses. And there are big changes happening in our city. And I think that is the biggest risk that we face as a community. How do we continue to grow and change in this city in a way that is inclusive, that doesn't leave anyone behind, and in a way that makes sure that even as Victoria grows and changes, it still remains recognizable as Victoria? That is so important because of all of the things that we love. How do we make sure that as we grow and change, everybody's well-being is enhanced? And if that sounds theoretical, what does that manifest like? What are our challenges? More traffic? More people? Larger population? Not enough homes? Not enough affordable housing? Not enough mental health and addiction support? Inadequate transit for the size of the population? And not enough workers to keep our economy running. Those are all big challenges, and they're very real challenges. We also have, as I mentioned, the fear. And it's a very real fear that Victoria is going to change so much that we don't recognize our city anymore. And we also have a desire that even as we continue to grow and change, the benefits of this change are more evenly distributed. And we also want to make sure, as the city grows and changes, that people feel like they are helping to shape their city in a way that's really meaningful, in a way that comes from citizens and comes from the business community, not just City Hall and going out asking and saying, we're doing this, what do you think? And I gave a talk this morning at the International Association of Public Participation where I focused in on that a little bit, because there's definitely been some lessons learned. So how do we move forward to address all of these challenges? There are 4 things we need to do. I'm going to say them in order of importance, and then I'm going to circle back to the most important one last. So the first thing we need to do, and this is a precursor or a foreshadowing or a sneak peek, I guess, at my platform, which we'll be releasing in a couple of weeks. The first thing we need to do is we need to act as if we are all in this together. That's the most important, and I'll come back to that. Let's have some applause for these. Okay, the second thing we need to do is we need to tackle affordability in a meaningful way. And affordability is more than just housing. Affordability means affordable transportation. It means affordable childcare. It means affordable access to food. And one of the things we released when the first brochure went out is free transit for every kid in the city under 18 without raising property taxes. And that puts $540 more into parents' pockets, and if you've got 2 kids, it puts $1,080 back into parents' pockets. That's affordability. Affordability is taking real action on affordable housing. It means that there's going to be some changes and some challenges, and we're going to need to discuss those, and that gets back to number 1. We're all in this together. We're going to need to discuss those in a really open-hearted way. It means that we're going to have to actually consider, and I had a group of women in their 50s come and say, we are living in Victoria, we don't have pensions, we don't want to leave, we want you to allow movable tiny homes in people's backyards at rents of no more than $500 a month. We'll build our homes, we'll roll them in, all we need is for you to make that policy change. There are going to be changes like that, and not everyone's going to like them, but we're going to have conversations about them so that we can understand each other's perspectives better. So that's a little bit about affordability with a lot more to come. The third thing we need to do is we really need to focus on well-being and prosperity. And I put those 2 things hand in hand. We need to make sure that the wonderful businesses continue to get the support they need, that they continue to have the workers they need, that they continue to get the community into the doors so that we can continue to build a strong economy and a sense that we are not separate, business and community together. We need to ensure that there is adequate job growth. So we just got the report on the official community plan, 2012 to 2017, the first 5 years of the plan. You, people who work in the private sector, created 1,100 new jobs. Sounds not bad over 5 years. Well, actually, it's way below the target of what we need. And so one of the things that I'm going to do after being re-elected is to create a second Mayor's Task Force on prosperity and economic development to make sure that we hit those job growth targets. Why? So that for those of you who have kids and grandkids here, they don't have to leave. They can come for Sunday dinner. Focusing on well-being. So prosperity and well-being, two sides of the same coin. Well-being, as Rob said, is what makes us Victoria. Quality of life is what makes us Victoria. And so taking action on well-being means taking people seriously. And one of the things we announced today, and I heard this over and over and over at every single kitchen table that I went to, we need to make our streets safer for kids. And so we announced today a plan to lower speed limits on local neighborhood streets to 30 kilometers an hour across the city. And that is what we... And I had a parent at a kitchen table talk so passionate about this, and he said, hey Lisa, if you get any calls, if anyone's mad, you just send them to me. I'll take all those calls because I want my kids alive past the age of 5. And fourth, we need to build a future-proof, sustainable city. Again, we're doing okay on climate change, but if we're really going to save ourselves and save our planet, we've got way more work to do. And the Climate Leadership Plan lays out some very bold targets, and we're going to hold ourselves and hold each other to those targets, and we're going to measure them. It means taking action on buildings, it means taking action on transportation, and it means taking action on waste. Doesn't sound sexy, but it's really, really important. So you'll see more details of that to come in the following weeks. So before I close, I'd like to come back to the number one plank of my platform, my number one commitment. And I hope that you'll embrace this commitment with me as well, which is the sense that we are all in this together. So I'm just going to read briefly from this book to illustrate the current challenge and how I think we can solve it. And if you want a good reading recommendation, it's called Out of the Wreckage, A New Politics in an Age of Crisis. And the author says, when I make the mistake of reading the online comments below my articles, or anyone else's, the image that strikes me is of people trapped, alone in their cars, in a traffic jam, unable to see past the vehicle in front of them. Their anger and aggression is focused on the drivers ahead, and they lean on the horn, blaring pointlessly. Their isolation and frustration blind them to the wider context, the reasons for the jam, the reasons for their anger, the wider problems the snarl-up might reveal. Alienation, separation, and stress suppress empathy, understanding, curiosity, and cooperation. Deep thought becomes impossible. Rather than deliberating together to solve our common problems, we shout and we shake our fists at each other. And that's not the kind of city that any of us wants. It's not the kind of campaign that I want, and I don't think it's what any of us deserves. If we want to solve the biggest challenges facing us, affordability, climate change, keeping our economy strong, we need to create more space for deliberative democracy. All that means, in plain speak, is we need to have hard conversations with love, with joy, with compassion, and with open-heartedness, even when, and especially when, it feels hard. And that's what I've been doing every 2 weeks, right in that building over there since I took office. I have a community drop-in. People come in all together, they sit down, we pour the coffee and tea, and we ask, what is the agenda? And people give us their agenda items, and then the person whose topic it is gets to speak, the rest of us listen, and then we deliberate together as a group. And some people have come in there really, really angry at me. They sit in my office, with the community as witnesses, and they tell me why they're angry. And I sit and I listen, and I ask them questions, and every time I learn something new. And each time it happens, I expect that they will just say their angry bit and then they'll leave. But because they know that all the other topics that the community want to talk about, they stay and they listen. And that's the kind of city that we need to build. Lisa talked about inclusiveness. Another story from my community drop-in, and there are many, but I'll just share this one and then I'll wrap up. One day, the first item on the agenda was homeless people sleeping in parks. The second item on the agenda was homelessness. So the first woman spoke and she shared her story. She lived next to a park and there were homeless people camping there, and she has compassion, but also she's scared or worried, and so she shared with the group her story. The next guy that got up said, I'm homeless and I'm living in a park. And he shared his story. And it was such a powerful moment because they could understand each other's perspectives. And it's only when we understand each other's perspectives deeply like that, that we can solve those problems together. So as you'll see when we release the platform in a couple of weeks, well, we're all in this together. It might seem like the fluffy part of the platform. I assure you, and I hope I've convinced you that it's not. You're going to see a detailed plan and lots of ways that we can have these kinds of conversations when things get hard, and indeed before they do. Because it's the only way we're going to be able to tackle changing in the city in a way that keeps all of us together in a loving and open-hearted way. So I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight, for joining us for the next 6 weeks, and for joining us for the next 4 years in a spirit of joy and open-hearted politics, so that even as we do the hard work, we can create a deeper sense of connection and belonging among all of us, even when and especially when it feels hard, and a deeper sense of connection to this place that we all love. Thank you so much.